Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Dariah Sethna. Happy Friday, or whatever day it is you're listening to the Cleveland Sports Show. Hope you are doing well. Hope your week has been great. Lots to discuss today in the sports universe. Obviously, the NBA and the player protesting has actually eclipsed to the other major sports leagues here in the United States. We're going to get into all of that. We also have some breaking news when it comes to European soccer in Europe. Lots to dive into today, so we're going to get started right away. But first, our brand new intro.
Cleveland is the city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions. At the wall, looking up, it's gone. Francisco Lindor with a three-run homer in the fourth, and it's 6-0 Cleveland. Baker wants to throw it. Mayfield goes deep for the end zone. Odell Beckham, he's got it. It's a Cleveland touchdown.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dariah Sethna of NordoniaHills.News, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome to the Cleveland Sports Show. Today is August 28th, 2020, which means that our sports fact of the day will be from August 28th, 1960, actually. On this day, 60 years ago, we have some MLB action for you. The Chicago White Sox suffer a tough loss to the Baltimore Orioles at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. In the top of the 8th inning, with Chicago trailing 3-1 and 2 runners on base, Ted Liszewski lines a pitch into the right field seats for what appears to be a 4-3 lead. Third base umpire Ed Hurley claims he called time, however, just before Milt Pappas delivered the ball to the plate, halting play because White Sox outfielder Floyd Robinson and first baseman Earl Torgeson were warming up outside the bullpen area prior to entering the contest defensively in the bottom of the inning. Sent back to the plate, Liszewski flies out. So 1960, the rules, looks like these umpires were a little bit strict at that time. However, it's not 1960, it is 2020, but I did want to get that sports fact of the day in to share it with you. Always some interesting stats. We always learn about some different rules when it comes to American professional sports leagues in different times, different eras. Always great to learn something new every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining me this week on the Cleveland Sports Show. A lot to discuss in the sports world, so let's get started right away. We're going to start in Europe with the UEFA Champions League. The final, it is official. Bayern Munich are the UEFA Champions League champions, defeating Paris by a final score of 1-0. A 59th minute goal by Kingsley Coman was all Bayern Munich needed in order to snatch this championship from Paris Saint-Germain. Kingsley Coman, actually from France, plays with the French national team. Rather ironic that he is the one who scores the winning goal in his home country, but for the opposing team. Also, our top scorers for the UEFA Champions League this year, it is official. Robert Lewandowski of Bayern Munich, the top scorer in the Champions League, 15 goals on the season. Coming in at second is Erling Braut Haaland of Dortmund with 10 goals. He and Lewandowski are the only two players in the Champions League this year to finish with double-digit scoring figures. Serge Gnabry of Bayern Munich finishes in third place with 9 goals, and Mislav Orsic of Dinamo Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, with 7 goals to come in at fourth place. And more news. I did mention that we had some stunning news here in the European soccer world, so let's get into that. It appears that Lionel Messi is not happy in Barcelona anymore. It looks like the lifelong Barcelona star will be seeking a trade elsewhere. The latest reports is that Manchester City of the Premier League in England are ready to offer 3 players in exchange for the Argentine superstar Lionel Messi. It is claimed that Gabriel Jesus, Bernardo Silva, and Eric Garcia are going to be offered to Barcelona in exchange for Lionel Messi. Nothing official yet. I did check this morning. Lionel Messi is still with Barcelona, but I was talking with some of my soccer friends on the Nordonia soccer team last night, and it does seem like this trade will be official. We'll see what happens, and we will update you as those trade rumors start to get a little more valid. Also, the MLS is back in full swing. The MLS Cup final is set to be on December 12th of this year. The playoffs are going to begin on November 20th. Due to the tragic shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, this past Sunday, there were games postponed in the MLS. On Wednesday, August 26th, there were 6 games scheduled for the MLS. Only one of them was played. It was Orlando City taking on Nashville. Orlando defeated Nashville by a final score of 3-1. The other 5 games were Miami taking on Atlanta, Dallas going up against Colorado, Real Salt Lake and LAFC, San Jose taking on Portland, and the Galaxy taking on Seattle. All of those 5 games were postponed. Today we do have a game, the only game of the day. Today at 8 o'clock p.m., the Montreal Impact will be facing Toronto FC. Tomorrow, another slate of games, actually lots of games, including the Ohio Derby, Cincinnati taking on Columbus tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Let's get more specific on those Ohio teams for you. As I mentioned, the Crew last week with a huge 3-0 win at home against Chicago. 3-0 the final score of that game. Derek Etienne in the 20th minute, Darlington Nagbe in the 81st minute, and Yassi Zardes in the 88th minute contributed to the 3-0 defeat to the Chicago Fire. The Crew then would go to New York City and face off against NYCFC. That game would be a loss. However, thanks to an Alexander Ring goal in the 59th minute, New York City FC defeats Columbus this past Monday by a final score of 1-0. As I mentioned, the Ohio Derby is today. The Columbus Crew are in Cincinnati and getting ready with a matchup against them. The Crew will then host Philadelphia Union this upcoming Wednesday, and Ohio Derby Part 2 will continue Sunday, September 6th, this time at MAPFRE Stadium in Columbus, where the Crew will be hosting FC Cincinnati. In terms of the schedule for FC Cincinnati, they tied DC United last Friday, 0-0 scoreline. However, this past Tuesday, Cincinnati fall to the Chicago Fire by a final score of 3-0. After the Ohio Derby, which will be tomorrow at 7:30, Cincinnati will be hosting the Chicago Fire. Let's see if they'll get revenge on Chicago. And then they'll be heading out to Columbus for Ohio Derby Part 2. So definitely interested to see who will come out victorious in these quote-unquote Ohio Derbies. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our soccer news this week for the Cleveland Sports Show. Obviously, the Lionel Messi trade is the huge headline of the day. Just wanted to let you know, nothing official yet, but we will keep you updated as those rumors, as I mentioned, become a little more valid. Let's move on to the NBA, and I mentioned the tragic shooting of Jacob Blake this past Sunday in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and not far from Milwaukee, actually. And given the fact that the Milwaukee Bucks represent the basketball world in terms of the state of Wisconsin, it was only fitting for them to release a statement on this horrendous event. And they also decided to boycott Game 5 of their first-round playoff playoff matchup against the Orlando Magic. Once other teams were learning about what the Milwaukee Bucks were doing in terms of boycotting the game, all the other NBA teams were in on it, and now there have been multiple player meetings on how the season is going to resume, if there will be a season, if there are some players who want to leave. But in terms of the Milwaukee Bucks, here is a statement they released this past Wednesday in terms of the shooting in Kenosha of Jacob Blake. Blake fortunately did live, but his attorney said that he is paralyzed from the waist down, and it's going to be a miracle if he does ever walk again. Very unfortunate event that took place in Kenosha this past week. The Bucks, Sterling Brown and point guard George Hill, former Cleveland Cavalier, read statements for the team regarding these horrific events.
The past 4 months have shed a light on the ongoing racial injustices facing our African American community. Citizens around the country have used their voices and platforms to speak out against these wrongdoings. Over the last few days in our home state of Wisconsin, we've seen the horrendous video of Jacob Blake being shot in the back 7 times by a police officer in Kenosha, and the additional shooting of protesters. Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there has been no action, so our focus today cannot be on basketball.
When we take the court and represent Milwaukee and Wisconsin, we are expected to play at a high level, give maximum effort, and hold each other accountable. We hold ourselves to that standard, and in this moment, we are demanding the same from lawmakers and law enforcement. We are calling for justice for Jacob Blake and demand the officers be held accountable. For this to occur, it is imperative for the Wisconsin State Legislature to reconvene after months of inaction and take up meaningful measures to address issues of police accountability, brutality, and criminal justice reform. We encourage all citizens to educate themselves, take peaceful and responsible action, and remember to vote on November 3rd on behalf of the Milwaukee Bucks.
And that was Sterling Brown and George Hill with their statements. It was the Milwaukee Bucks team statement, and it was given on Wednesday, August 26th. As I mentioned, multiple NBA games postponed. The Celtics and Raptors were supposed to kick off their second-round series actually yesterday. However, all the teams agreed to boycott and postpone their games. Still a little unsure of when the teams will be playing. I have been hearing reports ESPN has come out with statements that there may be games resuming this weekend, but the players did decide to resume the season, so that is good news for us NBA fans. Very happy that that can continue, but obviously we know that right now it is a little bit bigger than basketball, and I will LeBron James, will hear from him a little bit later on what his plans are and some of his initiatives in all of these situations. But that is the latest news in terms of the NBA. But while we are on the subject of the NBA, let's talk a little bit about what happened this past week, some of the major events. The Boston Celtics swept the Philadelphia 76ers. So remember last week how I said the Sixers were going to win 2 games in this series because I believed in them? Well, apparently I believed in them more than they did in themselves. The Sixers get swept, and they lose to the Celtics Sunday in Game 4 by a final score of 110-106. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown combined for 44 points. Jaylen Brown with 5 rebounds and 2 assists. Jason Tatum, 15 rebounds and 4 assists as well. Kemba Walker was the high scorer for the Celtics with 32 points in 36 minutes to go along with 4 rebounds and 4 assists. For the 76ers, Joel Embiid, you can't argue, has put up his numbers in this series, but he did not have any assists in Game 4. He did, however, have 30 points and 10 rebounds for that double-double. Al Horford with 12 points and 10 rebounds in 36 minutes. And Tobias Harris, who had a very scary fall, hit his head. He was able to walk off the court and did seem okay. However, he finished the game with 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists, all in 35 minutes. With the Sixers getting swept the next day, August 24th, which is actually my birthday, the 76ers fired head coach Brett Brown. It is official. Brett Brown is no longer the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's be honest, I definitely think that all of us saw this coming, especially with the way the Sixers performed on the road. They were phenomenal at home at the Wells Fargo Center, but on the road, there was a time they were 14 games below the 500 mark, and that's just unacceptable for a team who we thought was going to be making the NBA Finals and representing the Eastern Conference. I'll be honest with you, I thought the 76ers would be able to, with the roster they had, would have been able to overcome the Milwaukee Bucks and get to the NBA Finals, but they get swept out in the first round by a team. Yes, the Celtics were the better team, but they were the much smaller team. So I question why the 76ers struggled so much to basically to win at least one game. Joel Embiid put up his numbers, so it definitely seemed that he was getting in the paint, hitting his shots, but when I look at the 76ers, where does the shooting come from? I mean, Shake Milton is arguably their best three-point shooter, and Alec Burks has just been so inconsistent. Al Horford has been a shell of himself. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think it was a mistake for him to go to the 76ers. I think he should have stayed with the Celtics, because as you can see, the Celtics are without a big man. If you put Al Horford in that starting lineup with what the Celtics have right now, you've got a team who will definitely represent the East. But as of right now, the Celtics will be moving on to the second round and will be taking on the Toronto Raptors, who also swept their first round series. Raptors sweep the Brooklyn Nets and demolish them in 4 games. I guess the one takeaway I was a little bit disappointed about with the Nets was how they got Jamal Crawford and barely played the guy. I mean, this is just coming from the heart. Jamal Crawford is one of my top 6 favorite NBA players, and I was super excited to see him represent the Brooklyn Nets and wearing that black and white, and I was just very disappointed. I heard that he was having a hamstring injury, and I guess if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you should know that an older guy, Jamal Crawford's going to be 41 if I'm not mistaken. It's either 40 or 41. I believe it's 40. But, I mean, just seeing the guy on the bench all the time is just a little bit deflating. I know you want that veteran leadership, but Jamal Crawford has skills. This is a guy who can create his own shot. And the Nets, there were times that they were not able to score. They had those offensive droughts. And when you play a team like the Toronto Raptors, you can't have offensive droughts. And the way the Raptors play defense, it was just too much for the Brooklyn Nets to handle. Now, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Jordan, Nicholas Claxton, Spencer Dinwiddie, all those guys are going to be back. So the Nets are going to be box office next year. I am so excited to watch them. But in terms of this year, I was just a little disappointed to see how Jamal Crawford was not brought out the way I thought he would have been. But I did really enjoy the coaching of Jacques Vaughn. I think this is a guy who, if you have the opportunity to get a head coach such as Greg Popovich, Tyronn Lue, or Mark Jackson, you obviously get that guy, but somehow, someway, Jacques Vaughn needs to find himself as the second in command or an assistant coach with the Brooklyn Nets. I think his performance was fantastic as a coach in Orlando, and I definitely see him finding if not a position with the Brooklyn Nets, a position very, very soon with another NBA team, because he definitely is a coach who can reel in his troops. Another coach firing as well. We talked about Brett Brown being fired from the Sixers. Pacers also fired their head coach, Nate McMillan, after getting swept out of their first-round series to Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. In Game 4, the Pacers were actually doing pretty well. However, they get outscored in the fourth quarter 29-25. The second quarter hurt them as well. They were outscored by 7 in the second quarter. The only quarter the Pacers won was the first quarter, where they outscored Miami 22-21. Nate McMillan was fired this week as well, and the Pacers now have been swept in 3 of their last 4 playoff first-round matchups. They haven't been out of the first round in any of those 4 years. The most competitive the Pacers were Cavs fans, you may remember in the 2018 playoffs, LeBron's last playoff season with the Cavs, in that first round, Victor Oladipo and the Pacers took LeBron and the Cavs to 7 games. LeBron would end Game 7 with 45 points. It would take a monumental effort from LeBron to push past those Pacers, and Victor Oladipo would get injured the following year, and they got swept by the Celtics and Kyrie Irving in 2019, and now getting swept by Jimmy Butler and the Pacers. The Pacers were actually the higher seed. They were the 4 seed, but Jimmy Butler and company showed that it's not always about the record that determines who the better team is. And Nate McMillan is, as I mentioned, fired by the Indiana Pacers. Our next playoff series that we're going to dive into is the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. Donovan Mitchell and company, now with Mike Conley, a commanding 3-1 lead in this best-of-7 series after Game 4, after a 129-127 victory. Mike Conley obviously returning a huge boost for Utah, and in Game 5, technically a road game for the Jazz, Utah was ready to close it out. The Jazz outscored Utah 31-21 in the second quarter. However, it really was the Jamal Murray show for Denver. Jamal Murray would finish the game with 42, 8, and 8 in 41 minutes. 42 points, 8 assists, and 8 rebounds, all in 41 minutes. Michael Porter Jr. would also help contribute with 15 points in 34 minutes. Nikola Jokic of Denver was the second leading scorer with 31 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, all in 43 minutes. For the Jazz, Donovan Mitchell, another strong performance from him, 30 points in 38 minutes. Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson combined for 34 points. Clarkson has had a breakout playoff season with Utah. 17 points for him off the bench in 26 minutes. And Royce O'Neal, Joe Ingles combined for 23 points as well. Utah still leads this best-of-7 series 3-2, although they lost again in Game 5. Let's see what they'll be able to do in Game 6. I believe that the Utah Jazz will win this series in 6 games. I believe that Donovan Mitchell is playoff ready. He is clearly showing us that he is no joke. This is a guy who is officially has the 3rd most points in a playoff game ever. Michael Jordan is above him. Remember that 63-point performance in 1986 against the Celtics in Game 2, if you watch the Last Dance documentary. So Donovan Mitchell, it's clear this guy can really play some great basketball. And what Quinn Snyder, the head coach of the Jazz, is doing, the pieces that they have incorporated around him, you've got guys like Rudy Gobert, who in Game 5 only gave you 11 points, but gave you 12 rebounds in 43 minutes. This is a guy who is really the glue gun definition, I guess you could say, for the Utah Jazz. This is a guy who was drafted by them and really has made a huge impact in the paint, especially going up against Nikola Jokic. However, Game 5 still belonged to Denver, and here is what Denver point guard and highest scorer Jamal Murray had to say after the Game 5 victory to keep the Nuggets season alive.
We all got a will to win. It's as simple as that. And that can carry you, that can take you places. Utah's a good team. They're putting up a fight as well. It wasn't easy. But when we have that will to win, and we, like I said, we're on the same page and talking things out. Even when we make a mistake, we just move on to the next play. Just like we have to move on to the next game. We can't get too high, can't get too low. And we just got that resiliency in us, with or without the crowd.
And obviously that was Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets. A lot of people have discussed how he really is a guy who feeds off the crowd, and you see the passion he has at home games for the Denver Nuggets, but obviously that is different in this scenario in Orlando. However, the Nuggets season is still alive, and it's still going well. If they win in Game 6, this series will be tied at 3 games apiece, and we will be heading to a Game 7 between these two foes. However, I do think Utah will win this series in 6 games. I believe that the Jazz are the better team. I thought Denver was actually the more well-balanced team, but clearly with the pieces that Donovan Mitchell has around him, I made a mistake, and I underestimated what this Utah Jazz crew really has to offer. They were the 6th seed in the Western Conference, but that doesn't mean that they are not a quality team. Let's go back to the Milwaukee Bucks, who we mentioned them a few moments ago with the boycott and the statement they made in Orlando amidst of the Jacob Blake shooting that happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin earlier this week. The Bucks lead their best-of-7 series with the Orlando Magic 3-1. After dropping Game 1 by a final score of 122-110, the Bucks have steamrolled past the Magic to take a commanding 3-1 series lead. Giannis Antetokounmpo also officially won the Defensive Player of the Year this year for the NBA, so maybe that means MVP is up for grabs. Is LeBron going to win it? Giannis? We'll see. Hopefully it can be LeBron, we all are us Cleveland sports fans, but you never know. But it is official. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the NBA Defensive Player of the Year, and his defense, along with that of the Milwaukee Bucks, has just overwhelmed the Orlando Magic. In Game 3 this past Saturday, Orlando fell to Milwaukee by a final score of 121-107. The Bucks just poured it on and did not look back. They outscored the Magic early in the first quarter, 31-23, and they poured it on in the second quarter, a 39-20 second quarter score in favor of Milwaukee, and it helped them gain a 2-1 advantage in this best-of-7 series. Game 4 was basically more of the same. The Bucks score 121 points again to the Magic's 106. They outscore Orlando in the fourth quarter 37-25. Giannis Antetokounmpo finishes Game 4 with 31 points, 15 rebounds, and 8 assists, only 2 assists shy of a triple-double. Chris Middleton, who was in a bit of a funk in the first couple of games of this series, seems to have rekindled that fire. 21 points in 32 minutes for Middleton. Wesley Matthews also coming in, 12 points in 22 minutes, and Kyle Korver with 10 points in 19 minutes. In terms of the stats for Game 4, the Bucks shot almost 50% from the field while the Magic were at 40%. 17 three-pointers for Milwaukee compared to 18 for Orlando. And Milwaukee struggled at the free throw line, however, devoured the glass. 49 total rebounds, 8 offensive rebounds, and 29 assists compared to the 26 for Orlando. We'll get into our next series, and good news for you Houston Rockets fans. It appears that Russell Westbrook is healthy and ready to go. Just got a source from ESPN and heard news that Russell Westbrook looked as explosive as ever in a scrimmage this past Thursday, and it seems that Rockets fans, you'll be happy because Russell Westbrook is ready for Game 5. The Rockets and Thunder are tied in their first round playoff series at 2 games apiece. After falling behind 2-0, the Oklahoma City Thunder, with 2 huge bounce-back performances technically on their home floor, as they were 2 Thunder home games, and this series is now tied at 2 games apiece. We'll see what happens in Game 5, but in terms of the Rockets, that was the big news I wanted to share with you all, is that Russell Westbrook is back healthy, and it seems like he is ready to go. More explosive than ever was what his performance was described as. The Los Angeles Lakers played on August 24th, which is a day after the birthday of Kobe Bryant. 8 August 24, the day that is my birthday, and those were the 2 numbers of Kobe Bryant during his career with the Los Angeles Lakers. This past weekend was a great one for the Lakers and LeBron James. The Lakers defeat Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers in Game 3, 116-108 to take a 2-1 lead in that best-of-7 series. Anthony Davis and LeBron James were phenomenal. Anthony Davis, 29 points and 11 rebounds. LeBron James, 38 points, 8 assists, and 12 rebounds. Both of these guys were only 2 assists away from each getting a triple-double. And the bench stepped up as well. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Alex Caruso combined for 23 points. Rough night for Kyle Kuzma and Dwight Howard as they only combined for 12 points. However, a win is a win, and the Trailblazers were in a little bit of a funk, it seemed like. Carmelo Anthony, Damian Lillard, and CJ McCollum all came to play, but Yusuf Nurkic only 10 points, Hassan Whiteside only 8 points, Gary Trent Jr., who's been lighting it up in the bubble from three-point range, only 6 points in 27 minutes. That's just not going to get it done for the Portland Trailblazers. However, the game was competitive. That was not the case in Game 4. The Los Angeles Lakers blew out Portland 135-115 in Game 4 and have now taken a commanding 3-1 lead in this best-of-7 series. LeBron James and Anthony Davis combine for 48 points. LeBron with 6 rebounds and 10 assists as well to go along with 30 points in 28 minutes. Anthony Davis, 18 minutes, 18 points, also to go along with 5 rebounds and 5 assists. Danny Green, 14 points in 25 minutes for him. Dwight Howard and Kyle Kuzma, very impressive performance for the two of them. Kuzma stepped out of his funk, 18 points in 22 minutes for him, and Dwight Howard scoring 13 points in 22 minutes for Los Angeles. Damian Lillard had a rough night, only 11 points for him, and the news is worse if you're a Portland Trailblazers fan. Damian Lillard it seems that he will not be returning to the bubble. A day ago, it was reported that Damian Lillard was leaving the NBA campus in Orlando to have his knee examined. Portland then came out and listed him as out for Game 5. Game 5 would have been this past Wednesday, but obviously with the boycott, that will be rescheduled. And his availability to return to Orlando is yet to be determined. So that means CJ McCollum and Carmelo Anthony are really going to have to step up in terms of carrying that scoring load for the Portland Trailblazers. But I think the series is over. I was a little concerned after Game 1, after the Lakers lost that game 193. But after these 3 straight wins, I have regained faith in LeBron and Anthony Davis. And if they can perform the way they have been these last few games, I definitely see them possibly beating the Clippers when Western Conference Finals time comes around. And here is what LeBron had to say in his post-game interview after that Game 4 blowout victory against Portland. He was asked by a TNT reporter about the events that have happened these last few weeks, especially with the Jacob Blake shooting in the latest addition to that. And LeBron talked about his More Than a Vote initiative and what it really means to be an American.
I believe it starts in November. That's why I started the initiative that I'm doing with More Than a Vote, and getting people to understand what's really at risk, and the change that we continue to talk about change. We have an opportunity to make change, but it still doesn't stop there. Even with whoever comes next. So I don't know, Jared. There's a lot going on through my head. I appreciate it.
And Jared Greenberg interviewing LeBron. LeBron just discussing, hey, even after we vote in November, it's still our duty to be an American and to promote change in all of our communities. That is the message LeBron James has for us, and of course his More Than a Vote initiative. This is a great ambassador, not only for the game of basketball, but for our world as well. LeBron James, a terrific leader both on and off the court. Let's get to our next segment of the Cleveland Sports Show. Our basketball segment has concluded, and the Cleveland Indians are back and are in full swing. The Indians have been fantastic in this run. They this past week has been a little on and off, however, has been going well for the most part. This past Sunday, the Indians fell 7-4 to the Detroit Tigers at home, and then fell at home to the Minnesota Twins by a final score of 3-2. The Indians then bounced back with 2 straight wins against Minnesota at home at Progressive Field, a 4-2 victory on Tuesday, and then this past Wednesday, a 6-3 victory. And this past Saturday, Indians pitcher Triston McKenzie made history. This was a guy who was the second-round pick for the Indians back in 2015, and he played with the Akron Rubber Ducks for a bit, and now debuted for Cleveland this past Saturday, and he made some history. With his 10 strikeouts in an Indians debut, this is the second best ever. The best, first place, is Luis Tiant in 1964. In his Indians pitching debut, he had 11 strikeouts. Triston McKenzie coming in second all-time with 10. That makes him and Luis Tiant the only 2 players in Indians baseball history to have double-digit strikeouts in their first 2 games. Phenomenal performance by Triston McKenzie. This is just another elite pitcher you're adding to your staff. And McKenzie discussed in a post-game interview with Fox Sports Ohio about how guys like Shane Bieber, and Aaron Civale really have mentored McKenzie as he is beginning his MLB career, and what it's really going to take from him. Here's what McKenzie had to say in that Fox Sports Ohio interview of how guys like Civale and Shane Bieber have been helping him out in his MLB process.
You have no idea. I mean, last night, this morning, when I was kind of going through in terms of nerves and trying to get ready for the start and kind of just making sure I was mentally there, as I haven't thrown in a while. I texted him and I texted Savali, and both of them came back with great feedback in terms of just, going out there and just being the pitcher that I know I could be, and going out there and just competing. And I think it showed, and I'm really grateful to both of them. The guys with experience, guys that have been here before, and they kind of helped ease my mind and help me go out there and be comfortable.
What does it mean?
Well, keep your friends close and your enemies closer is the goal for the Indians right now. Obviously, the Indians have had a pretty decent week. However, the grind for them continues. Today, they are in St. Louis to take on the Cardinals. 8:15 is the first pitch for the game tonight in St. Louis. The Indians then have 2 more games against the Cardinals for this weekend, tomorrow at 1:15 p.m. and then Sunday at 2:15 p.m. The Indians will then head to Kansas City for 3 games against the Royals before coming back home to Progressive Field in Cleveland for 3 straight games against the Milwaukee Brewers. So pretty strong week for Triston McKenzie, and once again, as I mentioned, another strong pitcher you're adding to this Cleveland organization. Obviously, Mike Clevenger, you have Carlos Carrasco, Aaron Civale, and Shane Bieber. Now you've got Triston McKenzie. That's 5 pitchers you have on this team. The Indians, in terms of their overall standings in the MLB, they are 3rd place in the American League Central Division, 19 wins and 12 losses on the season. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. They actually have a better road record than they do at home. They're 9-7 at home and 10-5 on the road. Let's see if the Indians will be able to further improve that road record. But when they come home against the Brewers, let's see if they'll be able to handle their business. Final portion of the Cleveland Sports Show is upon us, and that is the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have had a pretty busy week. Starting this past Sunday, they waived Casey Dunn with an injury designation in his foot. They claimed Curtis Weaver via waivers from the Miami Dolphins. They placed Grant Delpit on the reserve injured list due to an Achilles problem. This past Wednesday, they claimed wide receiver Damian Willis from the Cincinnati Bengals, and they placed Curtis Weaver on reserve again with this time with a foot injury, and they signed John Toth this past Thursday. Those are the team transactions according to the Cleveland Browns on their home website. And with all these protests, as I mentioned, a lot of American professional sports leagues, even the NHL, the MLB, there were games canceled, postponed, probably a better way to put it, last night. And that's not the way it's going to be with the NFL. So a lot of players are are trying to find other ways to possibly discuss or voice their opinions. But as of right now, specifically for the Browns, their schedule is still on. As I mentioned, no preseason games due to the coronavirus pandemic. The Browns are going to be in Baltimore September 13th, and with that matchup against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. They will then have Thursday Night Football hosted here in Cleveland for their first home game at First Energy Stadium of the season. They'll be hosting the Cincinnati Bengals, a little Ohio rivalry there. That will be their first of two straight at home, as their next game will be their third game of the season overall will be September 27th at 1 p.m. against Washington. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this week's episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Obviously, we are living in uncertain, unprecedented times right now, and the sports world is showing that emphatically. We'll see what goes on. It seems like only a few games are being postponed. I am very happy that the NBA playoffs can resume. I think all sports fans are extremely happy about that. We just need some sports to maybe take our minds off some of these tragic events, but at the same time, we also need to be aware that at the end of the day, it is bigger than sports. And like LeBron said, like some of these other athletes have said, the biggest way we can really make a difference is voting. I'm not going to make this show political. This is a Cleveland sports. This is a sports show, but as LeBron has said himself, it is bigger than basketball. And when November comes, it is critical to vote, to register and to vote. And ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude the Cleveland Sports Show. But first, let me tell you about all the different ways you can access the Cleveland Sports Show. If you missed some past episodes, I'll tell you where you can access them. First and foremost, my Twitter account, at Nordonia Sports. I am Darius Sethna. You can spell my name, DARAYUSSETHNA on Twitter. I'm at Nordonia Sports. That's my Twitter handle. You can also access the Cleveland Sports Show on SoundCloud.com. Once again, just type in my name, DARAYUSSETHNA, and you'll be able to access all the Cleveland Sports Show episodes. If you head to NordoniaHills.News, go to the contributors section, and the second one down is my name, and all of my work is posted there as well. I've been doing some articles for NordoniaHills.News. I've been doing the podcast episodes. They're all posted there as well. And also, if you want the Cleveland Sports Show on the go wherever you are, take it with you on Spotify. That's right, the Cleveland Sports Show is on Spotify. Just type in my name in the search bar, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and you will get the Cleveland Sports Show podcast ready for you to listen to. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this week's episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Have a safe and healthy week. Thank you so much for joining me. Until our next episode next week, take care and stay safe. Thank you.